The initial 53-man roster is now set for the Jets. Lots of things we were expecting, a few surprises, and inexplicably, Ty Johnson lives to see another day. We'll discuss this today on the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Wednesday, August 31st, 2022, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com, thanking you for making this show your first listen or your first watch every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. If you like what you see or hear, hit the subscribe button. You'll never miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps the channel out, and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Well, we have our initial 53-man roster for the Jets. Initial is the key word here, though, because the Jets now have an opportunity to put in waiver claims for players sent packing by other teams. There are also free agents they may sign. They're probably going to tweak the roster between now and a week from Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. It's possible that this is the 53-man roster the Jets will have, but most of the time you make a couple of moves at least. And of course, once you get into the season, you have injuries, so the roster will change fairly frequently during the season. The Jets can also begin signing their practice squad today once players start clearing waivers, so we'll have our eyes on that. But we do have our initial 53-man roster. And I think every year at this time, it's important to remember that the roster decisions that were made were really your 53rd player versus your 54th player, your 52nd player versus your 55th player. Things like that. It's unlikely that these are going to have a meaningful impact on your roster. The guys who were cut, they probably were not going to play a big role, and they're probably not going to produce that much in the NFL this year. So it's important to not go overboard with the criticism just if you like a certain player or if if you disagree with the move. There's one move in particular that I actually do have an issue with, and we'll talk about that ahead. But let's go through the 53-man roster. And let's begin on the offensive side of the ball. And no surprise at the quarterback position. Jets keep three: Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White. Chris Streveler was informed, or we found out, the news broke on Monday that Chris Streveler was being waived. Will the Jets try and get him on the practice squad? I'm not sure. I've been vocal through preseason. I thought Streveler outplayed Mike White. I thought he should be the number 3 quarterback, but frankly, and I know Mike White has a lot of fans out there, and rightly so, based on the way he played in that game against the Bengals, where he threw for 405 yards against the Bengals last year. I get why people love Mike White, but if we're going to be honest, if the Jets have to start either Mike White or Chris Streveler this year, they're probably going to be in trouble. Mike White's shown he can execute a basic game plan. That's good. I felt like Streveler could also execute a basic game plan. I mean, I still don't understand why Flacco has to be the backup quarterback. But, if you're really going to get me to go crazy, Mike White over Chris Streveler, the coaches, it seemed like it was not a difficult decision for the coaches because there was nothing more Streveler could have done. And yet, on Sunday, if you were listening to the announcers during the game who spoke with the coaches, they said that there was no way Mike White was losing the number 3 job. I thought maybe he played his way out of it those first 2 preseason games, although he did play well against the Giants. But it's going to be Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White. That takes us to the running back position. And this is actually the one area where I have an issue with what the Jets did, and I'll explain why. So you have Michael Carter, you have Breece Hall. Those were the 2 guys you knew were going to be here. Kind of a surprise cut, Tevin Coleman. I thought the veteran was going to stick around. LaMichael Pirine also cut. Less of a surprise. I'd say far less of a surprise. The rookie Bam Knight, Zonovan Knight out of NC State, makes the team. I thought he was headed for the practice squad. It seemed like all indications were he was heading for the practice squad, but it sounded like he was impressing the Jets. It sounded like he was the kind of guy who could get called up for an injury. Well, he made the team. He showed some power running in the preseason. He also occasionally flashed a little speed. So Zonovan Knight makes the team. So congratulations to him. But here's the issue I have. The issue I have was with keeping Ty Johnson. And maybe it's not so much that they cut Tevin Coleman. I thought Tevin Coleman would have been a really good fit for a number 3 back. He's not a guy you really want to feature. Maybe a couple of carries a game. Maybe he can fill in for a game or two. There might be enough in the legs It doesn't have that breakaway speed he used to, maybe enough in the legs to still be productive. I mean, you look at a play-to-play basis last year, he was still a productive player. Also, when you're going with young backs, you've got guys who tend to have issues in pass protection. I mean, Breece Hall, it was ugly in pass protection against the Giants. So it's nice to have a veteran back there, especially one as accomplished in the passing game. Tevin Coleman, one of the best backs in the passing game of his generation. I'm talking the full package: pass protection, route running, receiving ability. He kind of has done it all. But that's not really the reason I have an issue, because Tevin Coleman's old. I understand why they cut Tevin Coleman. My issue is with keeping Ty Johnson. And do I think Ty Johnson's going to have a big role with this team? No. But here's why I have an issue with it. Is I'm a little concerned with the way the coaching staff used him last year. If they're going to use him that way again, it's actually going to be a problem for the Jets. Because they used him as a receiving back last year, and he's one of the worst receiving backs in the league. I mean, based on the way he played last year, I know that's kind of a big statement, but he kind of is. He can't catch, he can't run routes, he can't block. And they used him as a receiving back. So my concern is not so much that Ty Johnson's on the team, because, whatever, he's a fourth back. Not like he's going to see the field that much. Even if he's the third back, maybe he's number 3 over Zonovan Knight. That's fine. But you got two guys who profile as quality receivers out of the backfield in Breece Hall and Michael Carter. So if we're going to use them correctly and use them as your receiving backs, that's fine. But again, you've got younger guys. Maybe you have issues in pass protection. Maybe in receiving situations you want another back out there. If that back is going to be Ty Johnson, it's not going to be the difference between the Jets making the playoffs and missing the playoffs. But it's actually going to hurt the team if Ty Johnson's out there. And I'm a little worried that the coaching staff sees more in Ty Johnson as a receiver than pretty much anybody else does, because he's awful. I mean, I think he's actually okay as a runner. They want to use him as like insurance, as like the third or fourth back. That's fine. I just don't want to see him as a receiver. So the Jets haven't really told us how they're going to use him. This is just a little concern for me. And to me, if you're the GM, if you're Joe Douglas, and you've seen your coaching staff misuse a guy like this, Ty Johnson, it's almost on you to not give them the chance to do that and just cut this guy so that they're not tempted to use him as a receiving back. So Ty Johnson, and listen, there's a pretty good chance Ty Johnson's not on this team a week from Sunday. When I say that there are guys who could be cut, Ty Johnson's up there. So I don't love Ty Johnson still being on the team. That's really to the extent that I actually have a legitimate issue with something the Jets did. That's the one, because I can see the pathway for that being a problem. And there's no real... He's okay. He's actually okay as a runner. But there's no reason I'm pounding the table saying, Ty Johnson, he's got to be on the team this year. No, he doesn't have to be on the team this year. Now, Tevin Coleman doesn't have to be on the team. LaMichael Pirine, who was also cut, certainly doesn't need to be on the team. But there's no reason for Ty Johnson to be here. Let's move forward. We can go to the wide receiver position. Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Braxton Berrios, Garrett Wilson, Denzel Mims, and Jeff Smith. The headliner there is clearly Denzel Mims. Jets cut some receivers. They cut Irvin Charles. They cut Calvin Jackson. They cut Tariq Black. Denzel Mims still being on the team is the headliner there, and it's not clear how much longer Mims is still going to be on the team. I look at this, and I probably fall somewhere in the middle on the great Mims debate, because I don't know that he's got the upside that we thought he did back in 2020 when the Jets got him in the second round. We thought, a lot of us thought the Jets got a steal. I don't know that it's over for him. I think he is one of the 6 best receivers on the team, so I agree with keeping him. The question is how long he wants to be here, because he did kind of request a trade last week. So is he going to buy into a backup role? If he is, then I see a rationale for keeping him around, because, look, he's better than Jeff Smith, who's the other primary backup. I guess if you're going to go with the Jets have kind of 4 guys who are going to rotate in and out, they would be Davis, they'd be Moore, Garrett Wilson, and Braxton Berrios. Mims is clearly the number 5 receiver on this team. And, look, I don't know why Jeff Smith, the coaching staff, seems to see a lot in him, which I don't. But, listen, we're talking about, your 53rd guy on the roster right there. So, unlike with Ty Johnson, I don't think the Jets coaching staff is going to overuse Jeff Smith. The headliner here is Denzel Mims, and we'll just wait and see. He made it to the 53-man roster, and I don't know if the Jets are waiting for some team to panic and give them way too much in a trade for Mims. Or I don't know if Mims is buying into a backup role, but I do think keeping him is probably the right move. I don't know that he's much more than a backup receiver, but I think keeping him around, there is a degree of logic to it. So that's kind of where I landed after Sunday's big performance by Denzel Mims. At the tight end position, well, no great surprise. CJ Uzama, Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert, and Lawrence Cager. I was a little nervous the last couple days that Trayvon Wesco was going to make the team over Lawrence Cager. I'm happy it did not happen. So good job, Jets. This is like the anti-keeping Ty Johnson. This is the spot where they made the right move. I think having Cager around makes a lot of sense. He's shown, Robert Saleh said it himself, he went from being a slow wide receiver to a fast tight end. A guy who could potentially create matchup problems for other teams. He's still a developmental player, though, still new to the tight end position. But they kept, I'll give him credit. They kept him. They kept Cager over Kenny Yeboah. We knew Uzama. We knew Conklin. We knew Ruckert were going to be on the team. The question was who was going to be that fourth guy. And there was no reason to keep Wesco around. And Kenny Yeboah, he's kind of like the other young developmental receiving tight end, but Cager outplayed him. And maybe we'll see Yeboah on the practice squad, but I think Cager earned his spot on the team. We're talking number 4 tight ends here, so the inverse is also true. I say I'm not going to get upset when the Jets make a decision I disagree with outside of Ty Johnson. I'm not going to get super fired up because they kept Lawrence Cager, but a move I do agree with. And then on the offensive line, this is kind of interesting. You have Dwayne Brown, Laken Tomlinson, Connor McGovern, Elijah Vera-Tucker, George Fant, your 5 starters. And then the backups, only 3, Max Mitchell, Dan Feeney, Nate Herbig. A little light on the offensive line. You'd think they'd go with 9, but you know what? You can have 8. I think you can have 8 if you have guys who can back up multiple positions. I think Max Mitchell, you're looking at the swing tackle. Guy who actually I thought flashed a little bit, then kind of regressed as we progressed through training camp in the preseason. He's your backup tackle. Feeney is your backup guard or backup center, and Herbig's your backup guard. He'll probably back up both guard spots. Feeney has the ability to kick out to guard. Some interesting cuts on the offensive line. Former third-round pick Chuma Edoga was cut. Connor McDermott was cut. So a couple moves there that are a bit surprising. I thought at least one of these guys would hold on for the Jets between Edoga and McDermott, but I'm not going to complain because Edoga's had 3 years to develop and he hasn't developed at all. And McDermott, all he did was catch that patch. This is the old Buddy Ryan line about Chris Carter. All he does is catch touchdowns. All McDermott does is catch touchdowns. He had like touchdown catch. I think it was against Jacksonville, and that was it. But he's an offensive lineman, so if all you can say for an offensive lineman is all he does is catch touchdowns, it's not great. So I kind of agree with this. I don't have an issue with the Jets keeping 8. If you'll probably add a guy or 2 to the practice squad who gets called up, but you could very well go into a game day with 8 offensive linemen. That's not necessarily that big of a deal. So if you have guys who can back up multiple positions, I mean, is it really worth having McDermott around or Edoga around just to say you have 9 guys when you don't have 9 guys who can play effectively? I'd say no, you can get away with 1 backup at each position if you don't have capable backups. So that's what the Jets did. Now, ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we will turn our attention to the defensive side of the ball. It's no surprise. Robert Saleh likes to keep a lot of defensive linemen. He likes to rotate guys in. We'll talk about who made the team, though, as we continue on this Wednesday episode of Locked On Jets. Cutdown day is an unfortunate day that a lot of players now need jobs, not just with the Jets, but across the NFL. So if you're looking to hire, it's a time for you. There are plenty of applicants out there. As you gear up for the fall, you will need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. You can create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. There are simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Of course, the NFL season's just a little over a week away from beginning, and I know it's an exciting time for Jets fans. Young, promising players like Breece Hall and Elijah Moore could break out. Finally, there's some Jets you may want on your fantasy team. And if you want to play daily fantasy, you should head over to PrizePicks. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, both men and women, soccer, the WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. More than disc golf. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. There are safe and fast withdrawals, and they currently operate in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. Now, if you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign-in for an instant deposit match of up to $100. Thank you again for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. This show's free and available on all platforms. We're talking Jets 53-man roster today. The Jets at least gave us our initial roster. There will be some changes in the weeks ahead, as injuries come in, as the Jets maybe make some waiver claims today. We'll have to see what they do. But we have our initial 53-man roster. Now, if you know Robert Saleh, you know he loves to rotate guys in and out. So you knew they were going to keep a lot of the defensive linemen. And he sure did. You have Carl Lawson, you have Quinnen Williams, Sheldon Rankins, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Jacob Martin, Bryce Huff, Michael Clemens, Vinnie Curry, Nathan Shepard, and Solomon Thomas. And a few minor surprises there. Now, Bradley and I had a big fan base. I spoke about him a little bit on yesterday's show. To me, he's the kind of... Listen, it's not that he played poorly. He did play well in preseason. But to me, he's the kind of guy who kind of takes advantage of playing against... You see guys like this every year, guys who play the second half of preseason games, and they go out and play really well. People get really excited about them, but it's really just experienced players. I know Anai's not super experienced, but he's got 2 years in the NFL under his belt, going against a lot of rookies, going against guys who really don't belong in the league. So maybe you get a little bit of a misperception about their ability. I really don't have a problem with cutting Bradley and I think Bryce Huff certainly deserved to make the team. And I guess the issue people would have with this is Vinnie Curry. I think the Jets want his veteran leadership. He's been a good player in the past. Now, time will tell. I'm not ready to take a position yet on Vinnie Curry being on the team. Lots of people are upset about it. He's been injured. Last year he missed the full season with the blood disorder. This year he was injured a lot in training camp. The coaching staff sees him every day. I hate falling back on this. We'll see. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm saying I'll give them a chance to see this Vinnie Curry thing work out because, they could have gone in another direction. But, I look at the guys they cut who are also defensive ends. I'm going to get fired up about Bradley and I can't. You want me to get fired up about Jabari Zuniga? I don't think Jabari Zuniga is a guy who's really going to be that great in the league. So, these are the guys they cut for Vinnie Curry. It's not like it's worth getting that upset over. And Vinnie Curry's got a good track record. So, I'll let this play out a little bit. I don't think it's the end of the world, Vinnie Curry. Lots of criticism for this one. Listen, I'm with you on Ty Johnson. I'm not with you on Vinnie Curry. I'll give Vinnie Curry a shot because I think he has been a very good player in the past. And the other move of note here, I think, is keeping Nathan Shepard over Tanzel Smart and over Jonathan Marshall. I thought Marshall was going to make the team. So that's the one. And Marshall could end up on the practice squad. That would not surprise me at all to see him clear waivers and end up on the practice squad. But Nathan Shepard, they seem to like him and all the penalties last year. But there were some moments. There have been some moments where Nathan Shepard's looked like a solid rotational player. So he makes the team. I would have liked to have seen Jonathan Marshall, but I think Jonathan Marshall ends up on the practice squad. And again, unless it's a situation where I see where it's going to hurt the Jets, is there really that big of a difference between Nathan Shepard and Jonathan Marshall? I'd have to say no. Now, the linebacker position, you've got 4 players. You've got C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams, Quan Alexander, and Jamie and Sherwood. Sherwood, a guy who's really flashed a little bit. He's come back and looked improved, and he'll probably be the primary backup, I guess. Or it's difficult to say because I think the Jets' defense is really, they call it a 4-3. It's really more like a 4-2-5. So I guess you could say Quan Alexander and Jamie and Sherwood are the backups, but I think Sherwood deserved to make the team. What's interesting here are The players the Jets cut, among them, now DQ Thomas, I think everybody was expecting it to be cut. But Delshon Phillips, Hamza Nasruddin, reason that's notable is those were both guys Brant Boyer liked to use a lot last year on special teams. So is this a sign that the Jets are maybe less focused on the player's special teams ability? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe is it a sign there are other special teamers Brant Boyer really likes and would prefer to work with this year? I don't know. It's difficult to say. But it is notable that these two guys who played linebacker who were both kind of core special teamers a year ago. Nasruddin, when he was healthy, he wasn't around the whole year. Delshon Phillips, maybe the best special teamer the Jets had on the roster, both gone. So now, we'll see what they get as far as special teams go. Maybe Sherwood plays some special teams this year. But very interesting to see the Jets make this move at the linebacker position and go, get rid of two guys who were pretty key on special teams last year. Now, at the cornerback position, the surprise was the Jets cutting Javelin Guidry. We talked about that yesterday. Jets keep Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II, Bryce Hall, and Brandon Eccles. I'm interested to find out who the backup slot corner is behind Michael Carter II. That's the key one to me because I thought Guidry was going to make the team, in part because he was also a special teamer. I don't know what's going on with special teams, but not a big deal. Of course, the Jets cutting Javelin Guidry. But I think what's interesting is who's the backup slot corner behind Carter. Is it one of these guys? 5 is a little lighter corner. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jets add a corner. No real shock here. I think we knew these 5 guys would be on the team. I think the surprise is that there wasn't a 6th and that there's nobody who's really an obvious backup slot corner here. But look at it on paper, it's a good group of corners and a deep group of corners because you have Bryce Hall and Brandon Eccles who were starters last year. Bryce Hall I thought was a good starter last year. Brandon Eccles was not a great starter, but if Bryce Hall's your number 3 corner on the outside and Brandon Eccles is your number 4 corner on the outside, I think Brandon Eccles is number 4 corner on the outside. I think it's pretty good, and now he's got starting experience, so some good stuff there. Then the safety position, Jordan Whitehead makes it. LaMarcus Joyner, who it was looking a little dicey for him at some points in the preseason, he makes it. Tony Adams makes it, undrafted free agent signing, and Ashton Davis. I'm not going to go crazy over this. Again, my focus is not going crazy. Will Parks and Jason Pinnock are cut. I don't understand why Ashton Davis is still on the team. And this is one I have a little bit of an issue with. Again, I just can't go overboard, but Ashton Davis on the team over Parks, over Pinnock? Why? I don't love this because, first of all, we know Ashton Davis isn't a good player, but beyond that, you're keeping a guy who is a proven not good player. You're keeping him over guys who clearly outplayed him. Is Will Parks going to be a Pro Bowler? If Will Parks is on the field, the Jets are probably in trouble this year, if we're going to be honest. Jason Pinnock, I don't really know what he brings to the table, but these guys were better than Ashton Davis. Now, I don't see as much danger here because I think Joyner and Whitehead are the starters. And I think if the Jets have any sort of injuries at safety is one of the thinnest positions on the team, whether Parks is here or whether Pinnock is here or not. But I would have kept him over Ashton Davis. I don't love that. I don't love that, but Ashton Davis lives to see another day with the Jets. I guess we'll see what happens. This is a spot where I could see the Jets making a move, and I could see This is why I'm not ranting and raving right now, because I could see the Jets making a move at safety, and Ashton Davis would be the logical odd man out. So hopefully they do, because they need help at safety. That's not a great group. But as we close out today's episode of Locked On Jets, we will talk about the special teamers on the 53-man roster. That's ahead, closing out this Wednesday episode. Of course, hindsight is 20/20 when we break down the Jets roster, and you can't change the past. But what if you can get a little help from your future self? Maybe you'd like to borrow a little cash, and now you can with Dave. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hang-ups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Just download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Wednesday, breaking down the initial Jets 53-man roster, and we've made it to the special teamers. And there's no real surprise here. Jets keep 4 special teamers. We knew Greg Zuerlein won the kicking competition last week. I'm going to miss Eddie Pinheiro, though. Only Jets kicker between 2019 and 2021 who could make a kick. You have Braden Mann, the punter, who had a big year. I would have brought in more competition for Braden Mann this year, but the Jets did not. Thomas Hennessy, who's been around for a while, done a great job as the long snapper. And then the Jets kept, technically as a corner, Justin Hardy. I guess you could say he's the 6th corner, but I don't count Justin Hardy as a corner. Justin Hardy can't really play corner. He's a special teamer. He's a kind of a guy who plays on all the special teams units for the Jets. So he's the one guy. You know, I've talked about this core special teamers from last year when Jets actually had a pretty good special teams unit who have been cut. Justin Hardy was a guy who seemed like he was on the bubble this year. Jets decided to keep him around. Maybe that's the one guy they gave Brant Boyer. They maybe went to him and said, Brant, I'm sorry, we're taking away all your key players, but you get to keep Justin Hardy. Justin Hardy was kind of up and down. People forget, he was one of the first players the Jets signed in free agency in 2021. He was like the first or second day they got him. And it was a sign because the Jets had really bad special teams in 2020 after a number of quality seasons with Brant Boyer. And the fact they signed Justin Hardy as early as they did in 2021, I thought was a sign that they were really focused on upgrading the special teams, getting the special teams back to where it needed to be. And Hardy was up and down. He did tie for the team lead in tackles with Del'Shawn Phillips on special teams, but there were also a number of penalties. So I think the Jets believe those penalties were probably a bit of an aberration. I think they believe Justin Hardy's going to help them on special teams. They gave Brant Boyer one. They said, hey, Brant, sorry, we're taking away all your guys, but you get to keep Justin Hardy. That's how I view it. I think that's how the Jets operated. And now we'll see what happens. I don't think this is going to be the 53-man roster when the Jets take on the Ravens a week from Sunday. We'll see. Waiver claims are announced today. Jets get to put in claims on players who were placed on waivers. And if you're not familiar with that process, essentially the way it works is that if you have less than 4 years of experience and a player gets cut, every other team gets a chance to claim him. They get a chance to say, hey, I want that guy. If you do, you get him. And you get his contract. That's how waivers works. It's only with players with less than 4 years of experience. Players with more than 4 years of experience are free agents. They can sign wherever they want. But the first waiver claims are today, and it's the biggest batch because every team cut 27 players over the last couple days. So 27 players across the 32 teams, and a lot of them are young players. So we'll see who gets claimed on waivers today. And then after that, the Jets can begin signing players to their practice squad. So that process will begin today. But that's all for this episode of Locked On Jets. It's been great chatting with you. If you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. You'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please give the show a 5-star review. It helps us out. So does giving this episode a thumbs up on YouTube. Have a great day, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.